Well, I don't want to make things awkward for you, John, but it is our opinion that Fox News needs to fire its pollster. And I won't surprise you with that. I don't think you're surprised that I'm saying that.
All right, you know it's bad when the Trump administration told Fox News you need to fire your pollsters. In fact, right now, there seems to be a big dilemma. If you look up polls or Donald Trump polling, everything is hit or miss. Donald Trump's doing great. Donald Trump's doing bad. This is the worst president in history. This is the best president in history. At this point, I don't know if anyone knows what to believe anymore, but let's start with the Trump administration roasting Fox News.
He's about even on immigration in total, but everything else, he's sort of underwater. And particularly on the economy, tariffs, and inflation, he's well underwater. You've still got some work to do in that front. A lot of people think that he's spending too much time on tariffs and not enough time on the economy and lowering prices. What do you say?
Well, I don't want to make things awkward for you, John, but it is our opinion that Fox News needs to fire its pollster. And I won't surprise you with that. I don't think you're surprised that I'm saying that. But the Fox News pollster has always been wrong about President Trump. They were the ones that said all summer long that Kamala Harris was going to be the 47th president of the United States. So we don't acknowledge any of that polling.
Now, when it comes to deportations, everyone knows this is the one thing that Donald Trump has as far as the majority of Americans agree with Donald Trump on deportations. However, there is now a clip of Rachel Maddow from MSNBC. Somebody took a green screen, put it behind her, and she's trying to tell everybody Donald Trump is failing in everything, to include deportations. But I'm trying to show you this is how bad it's getting.
There's a new Washington Post ABC Ipsos poll that's out today. Their headline, Trump's immigration ratings turn negative. He's always been able to count on people being with him on the nasty things he says about immigrants. Not anymore. People are not with him on immigration anymore. The thing he can always count on having a positive approval rating on, not anymore. So it's all bad for Trump in terms of the public just soundly rejecting everything he's doing, even the stuff that he says just for political effect. It's having the opposite political effect that he intends. I don't know that we have ever seen another first 100 days from any president this roundly rejected and hated by the American people.
Do you know how ironic it is for Rachel Maddow to talk about political effect when we know the viewership has absolutely collapsed for MSNBC because of how biased they've been during the Kamala Harris reporting against Donald Trump? Now, something else you're probably noticing is this arbitrary 100-day mark. The media is absolutely running with the 100-day mark for Donald Trump, and of course, in the left-leaning media, everything is the worst news ever. The pollsters are like, it's collapsing. Everything is falling apart.
In his first term, what was the top term Googled with Trump in 100 days in? It was Twitter. That's what they were thinking about when they thought about Donald Trump. They were thinking about something associated with his personality. What is Donald Trump going to tweet today? What is he tweeting last night in the wee hours of the morning that I might have missed? Versus right now, what's the number one term associated with Donald Trump on Google? It's actually tariffs. So from the first term, what you had was personality and temperament. In the second term, what you have is about an actual policy. But again, in some ways, they're sort of similar, right? Because what's the new tariff policy going to be today? But again, one was about personality and temperament. That was in term one. And in term two, it's all about policy, tariffs.
So compare the feelings on the Twitters and the tariffs.
Yeah, so this I think is so interesting, right? Because you have personality here, you have policy here. But the disapproval, very similar, right? Disapprove of Trump on his Twitter use. It was 67% back in 2017. What about tariffs? 65% disapprove of his tariffs.
All right, I hope you guys are seeing the irony in how these pollster clips are going. I will agree, back in 2017, the way Donald Trump was using Twitter, it was definitely different. However, he must have been ahead of his time because nowadays Democrats are literally cursing on social media, making mockery of people, and somehow we're not talking about that today. We're talking about how Donald Trump used Twitter back in 2017. Let's continue.
Now in 2025. So what you're essentially seeing is folks are arriving to the same conclusion, but they're getting there via different roads. In term one, they dislike Trump's personality. In term two, what they dislike is his policy. Again, the key policy being tariffs, and that, of course, is driving the economic approval rating going down.
Then add it all up. What do you see in your analysis here.
Right. Okay. So again, if it was about personality in term number one, and it's about policy in term number two, but again, all roads lead to the same place. And that comes to this, which is Trump is out of touch with the concerns of most Americans. In April of 2017, 58% of Americans said that Trump was out of touch with the concerns of most Americans. Now it's 60%. Again, what this comes to, Kate, is that most Americans think that Trump has taken his eye off of the ball, but again, they're reaching it for different reasons. In term number one, it was because he was tweeting out every single gosh darn thing. In term number two, it's because, wait a minute, we don't want anything to do with tariffs. We wanted Trump to bring down inflation, but in fact, tariffs could bring up prices. Again, different roads, but it leads to the same ultimate conclusion, and that is a high disapproval for Donald Trump because he is out of touch with the concerns of most Americans.
And trust me, I already know what you're all thinking. This poll doesn't make any sense when we know the majority of Americans voted for Donald Trump, specifically on tariffs and especially on deportation. So let us move on because the Trump administration already has pointed out what is happening. The media is just not talking about the success of these tariffs or getting new investments within the country.
Press is not talking nearly enough about the positive impact of President Trump's deregulation campaign. And investments from the biggest companies and countries in the world are pouring in under this president. So far, total investment commitments under the Trump administration have reached more than $5 trillion, including $500 billion from Apple in U.S.-based manufacturing and training, $500 billion from NVIDIA in AI infrastructure, $100 billion from TSMC and U.S.-based chips manufacturing, and the $500 billion private investment by OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank in AI infrastructure as well. All of these investment commitments are estimated to generate at least 451,000 new high-paying jobs for American workers and families. At this point, President Trump has secured more investments in the United States of America in 100 days than Joe Biden did in 4 years.
And look, I am not so naive that I know the Trump administration will only report everything good and the left-leaning media is only going to report everything bad. But without a doubt, if you heard that stat that the Trump administration just broadcasted to the world, you know without a doubt these poll numbers would be a lot different because it's very difficult, and I think the Trump administration is doing a very bad job and actually knowing what's going on specifically with the tariffs, because even the Trump administration, they are using generalities and then sometimes will use specifics. And because of this is probably why we're seeing such a weird skew in all of these polls.
All right, well, let's just assume on Tuesday we went to a Democratic house of a friend of ours. And let's look at these numbers right here. And there was a bunch of Democrats there. Well, guess what? If you're a Democrat, you're frustrated, you're disappointed, and you are angry. Now, the next night we went over to our friends who were Republicans. They tend to be optimistic, fired up, proud, and inspired. However, if you really look at those numbers really, really closely, though, it shows the divide in the Republican Party because they are not nearly as inspired or proud or fired up as you would expect them to be, marking this 100 days, given the fact that Donald Trump has done everything he said he's going to do when he came into the office. But again, it shows the divide between the old guard and the MAGA Republicans that we now see who have taken over the party. All right.
Again, this is the problem I have and a lot of other people have. Literally from CNN, the exact same news network where they're saying everything is going downhill. Under the optimistic line, the majority of conservatives are optimistic, and the rest of these numbers burnt out, hardly anybody, angry, hardly anybody. What the heck is going on with these polls?
You know, we're talking about tariffs, we're talking about the economy, and it's just a disaster. I mean, that's the only real word you can use to describe it. I mean, take a look at Trump's economic approval rating now versus 100 days in to his first term, and what we see is it's 10 points lower, right? The economy was a strength for him during his first term. Now it is a weakness. Now it is dragging him down, and we talk about history, right, and historic numbers. I look back for every single president since Jimmy Carter in 1977, the lowest economic approval rating through 100 days belongs now to Donald John Trump. And more than that, you know, tariffs are also related to foreign affairs, right? Your relationships with other countries. So take a look at Donald Trump's approval rating when it comes to foreign affairs. You see, again, lower than the first term. You see it underwater, 39%. And again, that is the lowest on record all the way back since James Earl Carter in 1977 when we began polling that. And I love to see the smile when I refer to him as James Earl Carter.
No, it's that you're shouting at us.
I guess I'm so excited.
1900s.
I'm just so excited. Numbers get me excited.
I know they do. I know. That's why we love you, Harry.
Thank you, my friend. I mean, look, we've been talking about it. Donald Trump's overall approval rating, when you put it all together, is the worst on record at this point through 100 days. And the fact is, the only one who's anywhere close to Donald Trump was him in his first term at 44%. He's a dozen points behind Joe Biden, 24 points basically behind Barack Obama and George W. Bush. The bottom line is what Donald Trump is doing right now is not working in the minds of the American people. And I can guarantee you this. If Donald Trump's approval rating is 41% come November of 2026, you can kiss goodbye that House majority for the Republicans, and there's a decent chance as well they could blow the Senate as well, which is something I never thought could possibly happen given the map.
I like that you actually went through on the actual kiss.
Mwah, mwah,
Alyssa,
everyone,
you.
you're
David,
all so
thanks.
beautiful.
Harry, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Now look, what this all comes down to is we just love the number 100. $100, 100 sounds like a lot, so 100 obviously must mean something to Americans, especially when it comes to the first 100 days as the US president. But even Scott Jennings is like, hey, we just invented this as the media. This doesn't mean anything.
They have a tremendous amount of confidence in what's on deck. My understanding is they are on the brink of announcing a bunch of things, both with private companies and also with other countries, that they will then point to and say, see, the strategy is working. You just got to give us a little time.
What might be enough in that area? What would be the type of thing that would satisfy, you think, people?
Well, I think if you started rolling out agreements with our allies, I mean, there's 17 to 20 countries that really matter. If you started rolling out agreements with them and you started also to see more private companies saying, we're going to continue to invest in America, we're investing more in America, jobs going here, investments going there, I think that would give people the sense that, hey, there is a method here, there's a plan in all of this, and that begins to then lend itself to the idea that there's a trajectory that we're on, that down the line you can see that it's going to be working. So I think if you see some of this movement, some of these announcements, I think that will help with the economic numbers. I don't really think Trump is the kind of person who gets freaked out by the polls, frankly. I think he's quite confident in what he's doing. I don't sense a lot of panic over at the White House, and I don't really think they think the 100-day mark, which is arbitrary, we talk about it, but it's arbitrary to them, is something that they were looking at as a deadline for any of this to be done.
So I wonder, as you're looking at Democrats right now and moving into the rest of the year and next year, how you think they are doing at this point in time?
I think they've done a fantastic job at protesting Trump, and I think ultimately at the ballot box it means very little. And so what I think Democrats are going to have to do is define an alternative. What is their position on taxes? What is their position on tariffs? And just screaming no to everything Trump does isn't going to work. You remember it very well. When I was up on Capitol Hill with Leader Cantor, we were defined as the party of no for a long time, and that didn't go very far. It wasn't until we started defining our own agenda, our own alternatives to big initiatives like Obamacare. And even though those weren't going to pass the House of Representatives, it did give voters a clear choice and a clear alternative when it came to the ballot box. Historically, the president in the midterms is going to lose seats. Republicans don't have a lot of ground to lose there. So do Democrats, how are they going to pivot off things like tariffs? How are they going to pivot off of taxes? How are they going to pivot off of growing global uncertainty with our allies and strategic adversaries alike to provide voters with an alternative? And the alternative really can't be a continuation of the Biden-Harris policies that failed. So really, what are they going to do, and who is going to be the voice? I think one thing Democrats really need to establish is who the voice of 2026 and 2028 is going to be. Who are the new round of faces that voters are going to see as an alternative?
All right, if you are still watching this video, I really do appreciate it. Thank you guys for being here. Again, the polls are so hit or miss, and I know we love polls when they're in our favor, but remember, if a poll is so skewed and the wording is right, no matter what, you can get a poll to say whatever you want. We also live in an era where on the internet, especially the independent media, you can now bet on things like polling, so just make sure you're careful. You never know what's going on behind the scenes, and some people might be making some money based off of giving you wrong information. Thank you guys for everything. God bless, and we'll see you all later.